In the lead up to Human Rights Day, we're very happy to be hosting a series of discussions about the future of Europe, connecting youth with important MEPs who do the work for youth and wider society in Parliament. This is important in part because it is a human right per se that young people get heard, as it is established in Article 12 of the rights for children. And in that scenario, I'm very happy to be discussing here today with Ana Mencin and MEP Dr. Milan Brglez, both from Slovenia. Ana is a current part of the Slovenian national team, as well as a high schooler. Dr. Milan Brglez has a very long history, first in academia, where he was a professor of international relations at the University of Ljubljana, as well as in national politics, where he was at one point the Speaker of the Slovenian National Assembly, and currently he is an MEP and he sits within the Social Democratic European Party. It's a great honor to have both of you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to start with the first question now. So in the past few years, we have seen more and more people migrating to the European Union than ever before. Some because of the war, some because of climate change, some because of natural induced disasters, and some simply in search for a better life. Many human rights, such as freedom of movement, have been put under a question with a huge number of immigrants dying in the Mediterranean Sea, trying to reach the more developed countries of the European Union. How is the European Union still upholding the basic convention of human rights?
Yeah, the basic connection is still that every member state of the European Union is also a treaty party to the European Convention of Human Rights. Now, many states are sometimes not fulfilling all of the obligations properly, but still, in general, we can still speak about how far we are going into that direction. Another problem, which is pertinent, is that actually there is a kind of, you have two institutions. And the question is always the primacy. And the primacy for human rights protection is Council of Europe, not European Union. And somehow also, let's say, the relationship between two courts, because also in the European Union, we have the European Court of Justice, and very important court for protection of human rights is European Court of Human Rights. The two courts are, they're respective to each other, but none would like to be submitted to the jurisdiction of the other. I'm speaking that because there is also some formal reasons why things are not so, let's say, so obvious that everyone in the European Union, either from East or from the West, is really respecting all fundamental rights. We always need some external supervision. I'm glad that we have such one in Europe.
So speaking about like certain countries, specifically in the eastern part, in the Visegrad group, like specifically the protests in Poland happening right now when they're not fully respecting all of the human rights, where people are protesting against the ban of abortion that the government is trying to enforce. Do you think that this is impacting in any way how other countries outside the European Union are perceiving the European Union as the promoter of human rights and democracy?
Yeah, definitely. Because we always need to settle things internally. It is not just a question of Poland, but it is the most visible in case of Poland, how we are sometimes not doing our homework in respect of human rights. And then we'd like to promote it externally. Yes, in this respect is the difference between Council of Europe. Council of Europe is not really trying to promote, or it's not doing so much, it is not so visible on that, while European Union, in particular European Parliament, is trying to do very much in this respect, but this is not credible when human rights are not really respected at home, and this means also Poland in this respect.
When we're talking about trying to enforce human rights in different issues, we should probably also talk about the International Criminal Court, since I know that your primary priority in the European Parliament is environment, right? I would like to ask you if, in your opinion, the ICC should prosecute crimes against environment as crimes against humanity.
Yeah, I think that things are developing slowly in this respect. there are some hints in some of our reports, but those reports within the parliament are not at the legislative level yet. So there are some hints that something like that can be possible, and it's much easier perhaps to do it at the international level, not even at the level of the European Union or at the national level. So probably, but this will be very broad one. This will be very broad one, and very much will depend on how state parties to the International Criminal Court will actually, to Rome Statute, establish in International Criminal Court, how they will actually operationalize something like that, and the willingness there, because they have to specifically add it to the list of crimes.
Many of those questions, so whether something should be prosecuted by the ICC or so on, are discussed at both the formal level, so politics, and on the public level, mainly through the media. To connect the political discourse that we just discussed, it's like a great problem today are probably the fake news that are happening in like both America, where you see that like independent media houses are censoring themselves, like trying to get across most of this, like not fake information, but most of the information that they can confirm it's true. But also in Slovenia, where we can see the not so well-known media trying to spread false information in order to support some parties or so. Debate-based education is a tool of discourse that allows or encourages like radical cases. Do you believe that some principles behind it might be useful when trying to combat fake news? Or would you say that some people simply want change their views on a certain issues and it's better for them to just censor them?
I think this the first approach is always better, meaning debate-based education, because then you are dealing really with arguments, and you have to supply sources of that arguments. You have to rely on something. You cannot just make news, make data, and out of that also derive some consequences. I always believe that this is more important, but on the other side, I do not, for some, I'm more or less convinced that they would not change their mind. But nevertheless, there is always a hope that through education we can achieve something, because just spreading, okay, we can do something on the let's say the responsibility for those spreading fake news. Yes, this can be done, but just censor. I'm most unlikely to go into that direction. I believe that enlightenment. This is the only way.
Globalization specifically made it possible for us to discuss certain issues that are happening all over the world. For example, I, a person from Slovenia, wouldn't know about like Black Lives Matter protests happening in America if I wouldn't have some social media or internet to read this from. Like, would you say that this is a good way of spreading awareness and raising the level of engagement of younger generations into politics?
Yeah, in that respect, yes. In that respect, definitely, because otherwise, without having moral, for me, really a huge change actually happened with the introduction of internet, I would say. When it was possible to even read the, let's say, Security Council resolutions immediately after their adoption, it was huge change, because you otherwise you have to rely only on what was put it through official media, and this was sometimes not really detailed one. I believe, yeah, this is the way, and but we have to also have a kind of a perception. So we have to understand what is going on. We have to have some education to find out what is verified, what is not verified. We have to work also into this respect, because just having data, it is not enough. You have to understand what is going on.
I'm talking about everything moving online. Everything is like specifically moving online due to coronavirus right now, and a lot of things have changed. For me, I know that a few months ago, I couldn't possibly imagine debating with 120 teams on an international tournament, but moving online made it possible. Sadly, there have been many downsides to everything moving online, specifically for the people who were disadvantaged before and don't have access to proper technology to work from home or to study online. Whether we want it or not, those changes are going to impact the education system even after the pandemic is over. In your opinion, how, like either for the worse or better, will the education system change after the lockdown?
I hope for the better in terms of, let's say, combining these two words. One, when we has been forced to do it online, despite we know that this rise inequality or pre-existing inequality, either in access, either in some other way. But this can be okay. This very much depend on the age also of those involved. Younger there are more disadvantages. Is actually rising. The gap is bigger. But otherwise, I believe that after this pandemic, we will be able to make a kind of hybrid events when a lot which will somehow, at least for some events, level up or even upgrade the participation level for some which are otherwise unable to travel to specific event to be on seat. But still, there will be a need of a mix, for good thing through the internet. Firstly, you need normal contact. Yeah, you start with that, and then you can develop. You cannot just develop through the internet the way how these things have to be, because this is not just a question of reasoning, it's also a question of empathy and emotions.
For the last question, I'd like to connect the pandemic that is currently happening back to the human rights, which we started this interview with. So many suggest that some of the basic human rights have been violated. So for example, freedom of movement or even freedom of speech with wearing masks. What do you think is the right balance between the two? So between regulations and the violation of human rights? And what do you think, how the media specifically impacts those perception of violation of human rights?
Oh, this is a huge one. It depends, how the measures which has been taken because to prevent the spread of virus. What are those measures which are justified, which are proportional, which are not proportional? At least in some states, it happened that in addition to those necessary measures, some additional one, which has much more clearly political purpose, has been there. Then another issue was, are, let's say, constitutional or international law balance between two, or how they are respected, because you can somehow regulate how particular right is exercised, but you cannot just say that you have no right. For something like that, you need either war or basically exceptional circumstances, urgencies, but you have to declare them. And sometimes, some governments somehow try to avoid that one. I believe that we will try to settle things down also legally, also far after the epidemic, because for something like to happen in the future, we have to have really clear rules. What governments can do, and what kind of supervision they have to have. Either from the constitutional court or that they adopt the measures in the parliament, not just by themselves, because in general, you cannot regulate the questions of human rights just by regulations of government, but by laws. And this is the most basic one where things are probably not most properly tackled.
I definitely agree with that. Thank you for this interview.
Thank you.